Tonight, we have with us a very special, distinguished guest to discuss this in detail. Seema Sirohi, who is not just a veteran journalist, but also an author who has covered and written about US India relations for a long time, almost 3 decades now. Welcome, Ms. Sirohi, and thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Marvi. Thank you for having me.
As you know that we are discussing about the India-Iran recent deal and how the US reacted to it, and how the external affair minister of India has actually downplayed it, and there is no other chatter going on after that. This is a 2 days old news. So seemingly it is just gone under the radar for now, at least. But we just wanted to discuss, if for the benefit of our viewers, you could just explain a bit why Chabahar matters and what it means for India.
At the very basic level, this deal began being discussed way back in 2002 between the National Security Advisor of India. At that time, it was Brijesh Mishra, and Hassan Rouhani, who was the National Security Advisor in Iran. And they discussed it, but then President George W. Bush in the US declared Iran as part of the axis of evil. So things just got stalled. Then in around 2015 or so, Afghanistan's president at that time, Ashraf Ghani, visited India and talked to Prime Minister Modi. And then Modi went to Iran in 2016. And they sort of signed the basic agreement. The deal is very important for India because it gives India access to the landlocked countries of Central Asia and an alternate route that bypasses Pakistan. Because as you know, Pakistan has not allowed trade routes from India via its territory. And that's been a long, simmering problem. And India has always wanted to somehow get an alternate route. So this has been very important strategically for India. But things have stalled every now and then because of the US, generally the US sanctions against Iran at different points in time. But then when Donald Trump was president, India did get an exemption to continue working with on this deal, because it would help Afghanistan. If you remember, Trump also wanted to get out of Afghanistan. There was a deal signed with the government, etc. Now, that exemption, it's not clear whether it'll apply now. The hope is that it would, because it's also in the US interest not to open another front. Right? The Middle East is already boiling. If there is one way to bring Iran back into, dialogue, etc., or to make Iran interested in trade rather than only spawning all these groups that attack Israel, I think it would make sense for US strategy as well. But I think what the State Department spokesman was saying at that day, 2 days ago, was the basic US policy. I don't think it's been discussed at very high level as yet. And what the Indian foreign minister was saying was basically that it's in the interest of a lot of countries. So he hopes the US is going to look at it in a proper strategic manner and not impose sanctions. I think I would be very surprised if the US decides to impose sanctions on India, given all the other stakes in the US-India relationship.
That's right. We'll come to India-US relationship in a minute. But first, would you tell our viewers what is the size of investment that India is expected to make in the on the Chabahar port to develop it and then to participate in its running?
So India has been operating the port at for some time, but
Mm,
now it's a long-term investment for 10 years. It has promised to invest, I think, $125 million.
mm,
$25 million have already been invested in Chabahar by India. It has supplied, I think, six huge cranes and developed roads and other facilities in the port to be operational. And during COVID, actually, a lot of supplies went through Chabahar, and it was very useful at that time.
mm.
So the idea is 125 million. And then there is a line of credit as well that India has extended to Iran. I think that is around 250 million. So
Mhm.
it's a significant amount of investment that India is making.
Yeah.
And the Iranians are on board.
Mhm.
As you know, Iran can also be a very difficult negotiator, and
Right.
it's not an easy country to deal with.
Mhm.
They extract their pound of flesh with every negotiation. They are very, very tough negotiators. So let's see how it progresses. But it seems that this time it might be more serious than in the past.
Yeah. So that begets the question, um, does India have a plan B in case US goes ahead with the sanctions? It's a long, it's a long shot because I agree with you. This it's not happening. But in case some of it happens, because in the during the briefing when Vedant Patel, the deputy spokesperson of State Department, was answering the question about India-Iran Chabahar deal, the next question from a journalist was, will some of the exemptions that have been given to India in past work or be extended? And his one-word answer was no. So, what do you think would happen if, even if the sanctions do not come in the way they have been coming for different countries? There can be different consequences. First, what can those consequences be? And the second, how will India? What is Plan B for India?
I think there will be a lot of behind the scenes diplomacy,
Mm,
which maybe we don't know, but maybe it's already started. But India is in the midst of an election season. The Americans know that. So, whatever they decide to do, that is the US, they will wait for elections to be over, for the new government to be sworn in.
mm,
Only after that will they take any action if they plan to.
mm.
But my guess is that back channel diplomacy must be going on at this time. And the Americans may, think of imposing something on some company that is involved in supplying. But when I look at American reluctance to impose sanctions on India, I think of the S-400, which
Mm,
India has bought from Russia. Now, that is a huge deal that India signed, and India did not back down. It
mm,
and managed to sort of convince the Americans that it needed those air defense missiles because China has them and for its own defense. So,
yeah.
if you look at the larger US policy, which is to counter China in the Indo-Pacific,
Mm,
India is an extremely crucial part of it.
mm,
So, I don't see any scenario where they would sanction India in any significant way.
Yeah, but how far India can take advantage, I mean, take benefit from Chabahar port when we know that it's not a deep sea port? How far it is going to be, beneficial for India's future plans, which are grand?
Yes, the plans on paper are very grand because the idea is to link Chabahar with the north-south corridor, ultimately to Russia, to the Caspian Sea,
Mm.
etc. But that, because of the Ukraine war, again, is in jeopardy. That whole plan of linking Chabahar to the larger transport corridor. Um, as we know, and as you know, Gwadar hasn't gone anywhere in 10 years. In fact, if anything, um, the work has almost stopped, and the Pakistan government is barely getting 10% of all the money that, whatever little money is coming from it. Very few ships have docked. And its capacity is also grander on paper than in real life. Karachi port does much more business and takes in bigger container ships than Gwadar.
Mm.
So I think Gwadar has become kind of a sign of failure of China's BRI, Belt Road Initiative, which also is a reason, another reason for India to, develop this Chabahar, to have a kind of counter to China.
Mm.
Again, that's another reason
Yeah.
for the Americans
America, yeah,
to not sanction India,
absolutely. Mm.
because American policy is to counter China in the Indo-Pacific. And this would be a great project if it works out and if it gets going. Not only will it counter China's Belt Road Initiative, which is in doldrums now, from whatever I read, but it would bring Iran into, some sort of dialogue.
Engagement mode, yeah.
Yes, which would be beneficial for Israel, for all the other countries.
Everyone, yeah, for everyone.
So it could be a good point of departure, this if the Americans were to support this project. I don't think they're going to, I mean, it's my guess. I
Yeah.
don't think they're going to sanction.
Considering all of this, which you have very eloquently described, it is completely counterproductive from the viewpoint of USA to even hint at, at such sanctions. Why would, at this point in time, USA even casually hint at that? Was this a slip of tongue, or was this, or a slip of tongue happens at this level? What is your assessment, considering you have covered US in India for a long time now?
So I think it was just basically stating existing US policy, which the spokesman of the State Department does that as like a normal thing.
Mm.
Um, he, I don't think the thing had reached, let's say, at the Secretary of State level or even, higher, that whether this deal is good for the US or bad for the US. I don't think it's been discussed yet. So what he was doing was basically doing his job, which is to say what is existing policy. And you can take it with, a pinch of salt. I don't think the Indians are greatly perturbed by it. I know that some people in the Twitter world are reading quite a bit into it. But I think he was just stating US policy, and it should be left at that. There's much more to be done now in terms of diplomacy. I mean, if the Americans could understand India buying Russian oil as the
Yeah,
war began with Ukraine,
exactly.
and India was able to convince the Americans that what it was doing was actually to the benefit of Europe, Because if India had gone to Saudi Arabia and, bought oil from there, not only would the prices have gone up, but the supply would have been constrained. So
That's right. Yeah.
and it bought
And at that time also, I remember that USA did not hide its discomfort in the beginning, but then at the end, everything panned out quite greatly for everyone.
yeah, yeah.
So
And the price remained low, the supply remained adequate for everyone. Because the
that's
war
right. And
had disrupted so many things,
yeah,
food supply, fertilizer, fuel, everything.
yes. So you don't see anything that should worry the observers right now between India and USA.
I think that if the US were to impose sanctions on India, uh, it would take us back at least 15 years. Because when the US last imposed sanctions on India after the nuclear tests in 1998, the effect of that on the relationship was immense. It took years to lift those sanctions, for trust to rebuild. I think it would be uh, very surprising to me if the US were to go down the same path again and it would break the relationship,
Right.
or take it down into a
Yeah.
place from where recovery would be that much more difficult. Because
Yeah.
then people in India would say, see, this is the unreliability of the United States. So, they can ditch you when they want to.
And with this, we thank you, Seema Sirohi, and we will we will keep inviting you for our other topics. Especially, we would like to have a discussion about your book on India-US relations. That's an excellent book, and we will bring the gist of that with you to our viewers very soon. Thank you very much. And thank you, viewers, for tuning in. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and never stop standing up for what is right. Good night.